It's now 5:35, so we're going to call the Ordinance Committee meeting to order.
Councilor Linehan? Here. Councilor Seca? Here. Councilor Spatafora? Councilor Winslow? Here. Chair Crow?
Here. All right. So we have actually a lot to get to tonight, and we have members of the Planning Board here, so thank you all for coming. We have some city staff, Debbie Burke, Christina Sang, and Michelle Romero, who's been working on this project as well with Stantec. So we'll introduce, these are our consultants from Stantec, and the way we're going to kind of do this meeting, we're going to get through the whole presentation because they have 3 scenarios to kind of talk about, and then we'll see if we'll have time for questions and answers, and then we'll kind of try to see if we can get a pulse of the council on and off committee if there's any one of those scenarios that they want to really fully develop. I mean, or instead of doing all 3, because it's a lot of work and we do have a time frame that we have to get to. So I am going to turn it over to our consultants from Stantec Urban Places Division, and you can turn your mic on. Okay. And can you, just for the record, pronounce your name and address for the minutes?
Yeah, sure. So it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having us to the City Council and the Planning Board. This is an exciting moment to talk about the MBTA communities. My name is Nels Nelson, and our office is at 40 Water Street in Boston. And this is Sarah Brent McCoy. So we've been working on this project. Are we all set?
If you want to pull the mic a little closer to you, because it is
sure.
a little hard to hear.
I'll just get closer. Yeah, we've been working with your terrific staff on this since the beginning of the year, and we'll be sharing with you a little bit of some background on the MBTA communities legislation, as well as the scenarios that were alluded to. And I'm going to let my colleague Sarah Brent walk us through the analysis we've done.
All right. So we have a bunch we want to get to tonight. We'll walk through the MBTA Communities Law, some of the Malden-specific requirements related to the law, and then we'll, and I think you may all be familiar with those at some level, but walking through them together. Introduce what we're thinking for the impact analysis, introduce some initial scenarios with capacity calculations, how many multifamily units they would each result in, or zoned multifamily units, and then get your feedback on the scenarios and discuss compliance. Through our initial analysis, we've come up with a few takeaways. One being that Malden already has a really strong foundation of existing multifamily housing. You have a lot of locations where by right multifamily zoning could make sense, and there are some decisions to make with all those locations. And then additionally, there may need to be, in order to develop a compliant zoning district or overlay, there may need to be some changes to the underlying dimensional standards or parking requirements in addition to the lots of multifamily. Very briefly, and we can refer back to this later, the MBTA Communities Law requires that about 170 municipalities in Massachusetts have at least one district in which multifamily housing is permitted as of right. It should have a minimum gross density of 15 units per acre. It should have some relationship to MBTA infrastructure if it's one of the communities with a station in bounds. And non-compliance renders municipalities ineligible for the Housing Choice Initiative, the Local Capital Projects Fund, and MassWorks. Department of Housing and Community Development, DHCD, is running the show. They're developing the guidelines. They're providing us with standardized data sets and have developed the tools that a lot of these estimates that we'll go through come from. Getting into the specific requirements, Malden is required to have zoning for 6,930 multifamily units. It's that same overall gross density, and specific to Malden, 50% of the district area and unit capacity needs to be within a half-mile radius of MBTA stations. I'm not worried about us hitting the minimum area of 31 zoned acres. That would be really high density to fit 7,000 units, but the two sub-bullets are important here, and we'll get into that. At least half of the area and the unit capacity must be contiguous in a single part of the city. And then the remaining acres and capacity can be in smaller clusters of about 5 acres or more, but we can't just pick and choose single parcels. On the map, you'll see that the law involves a lot of the state, and that Malden is one of a handful of rapid transit communities. Going through our process really quickly, we're in phase one. Phase one is really, as Malden continues, Malden figures out if they want to comply. We're figuring out, where is multifamily concentrated and being built in Malden now? What are your planning and development goals? How does your underlying zoning support multifamily development today? We're in the process of and have been iterating with staff on scenarios guided by the question, where and with what dimensional requirements might Malden comply? And we're excited to talk with you about those today. We're just getting started with the impact analysis, understanding how each scenario, what the benefits and trade-offs are of each scenario. And if Malden decides to pursue compliance, we'd move forward with selecting a scenario, drafting zoning, and facilitating zoning adoption and submission of all the required materials to DHCD by the end of the year. So why are we going with scenarios? As I mentioned earlier, the guidelines are written to afford communities a lot of flexibility, determining where and how they want to comply. Malden has a lot of places that they could pick that would make sense, for some reasons, maybe not others. But Malden has a lot of flexibility and a lot of decisions to make. And so scenarios we find are a helpful way to get the conversation going. The scenarios we're presenting tonight are not a recommendation, but rather a starting place to tease out some of what you're thinking. And also, I guess, illustrate, yep. And I guess also illustrate some of the challenges or opportunities we're starting to see through our analysis. I want to introduce really quickly our impact analysis. It's one of a suite of inputs to the decision that Malden is going to make if they decide to pursue compliance. To consider the different scenarios, we're going to look at some of the benefits and trade-offs of each scenario, given the location and number of units. And our list right now is municipal tax revenue, traffic volume and transit use, school enrollment, state aid for education, sewer, water, and stormwater infrastructure, and open space. But at the end, we can see if that's the right list. So as I said, there's a handful of places that might make sense for Malden to include. These characteristics could be that it adds a bunch of capacity to, it chips away at that 6,930 number. It's contiguous. It contributes to that 50% of all capacity in area being contiguous. It's close to a T station. It's where we already have multifamily development. The zoning is already pretty much there. And so you have a lot of places that at least check some of these boxes. Through our conversations so far with the city, and through our analysis, we found, this isn't going to be a blanket overlay that makes sense for a wide swath of Malden, it's likely going to need to be a combination of different parts of the city with different densities and dimensional standards and potentially parking requirements, other requirements. And so we'll start thinking through some of that mixing and matching later tonight. So here are the 9 areas that we've initially identified to discuss tonight. You can see a lot of them are within that half-mile radius. A lot of them are contiguous within that half-mile radius, the dotted line around the 2 T stations. I'll just help make sense of this graphic. Everything in the colored boxes is a rough, rounded for ease of mental math number of that is the estimated unit capacity of these districts if they were to be zoned for multifamily given certain dimensional requirements or dimensional standards. As you can see, this includes a bunch of areas that already have pretty high density multifamily, a few that don't but are nearby, or could offer a lot of capacity. And then, of course, there are a handful of more neighborhood scale, neighborhood density areas that are adjacent to, that are part of that contiguous block, including Summer Street and what we're calling north of Florence, and a bit of Main Street. So as you can see, all of these numbers, we don't need to include all of these areas of town. We're coming to you with all of these adding up to about 12,000 units. Again, you only need 6,930 zoned unit capacity. So I guess this is just to represent a lot of different ways forward, I guess. So yeah, as you can see, a handful of them already have multifamily zoning, some do not. We can come back to these as we discuss. I know there's a lot of information.
We get, not multifamily zoning.
Or, sorry, yes, existing or already permitted multifamily housing, not zoning. Thank you. Sure, yeah, so this second map is showing areas with the same areas that we identified on the first map, this one, but just highlighting existing or already permitted multifamily housing within them. And then the numbers in the boxes, the top number is all of the multifamily units already there. And then the bottom number is if there are 1 or 2 unit, if there's 1 or 2 unit housing units in those areas, that those numbers are added on top of the other number. Or that's just total housing, not just multifamily. So how might we go ahead and potentially group some of these scenarios? One of these alone is not going to hit the capacity requirement. So you could prioritize areas near transit. You could prioritize larger lot areas, some of the ones further east, such as Overlook Ridge. And, or you could prioritize existing multifamily clusters and really try to minimize the net new zoned units. So getting into scenario 1, we see that, we've, in the map to the right, you're utilizing all of the areas within the half-mile radius that we've identified, but you're still, the combination of units that there's capacity for doesn't quite reach that minimum requirement of 6,930. So you would need to add some capacity somewhere else outside of the half-mile radius. Here we have it shown at Overlook Ridge, the remainder of 500 units, but that could be Altitude, Broadway Plaza, and with this one, we see a net new zoned units of just under 3,000-ish. Again, these are all rounded numbers for ease of conversation and would be formalized down the road once the dimensional requirements or dimensional standards are formalized, and we want to make sure that we have all the latest materials from DHCD before presenting final numbers. So the scenario 1 has 71% of the area within a half mile of the T stations, and 66% of its area is contiguous. So those boxes are checked with this one. Scenario 2, if we were to put more capacity outside of the half mile radius, focusing them in Malden Center A, what we call Malden Center A, the yellow on the map, Malden Center B, the pink on the map, which is the National Grid site, and Oak Grove. There's 2 existing multifamily developments there, and then 2 smaller parcels. And then adding a capacity at Overlook Ridge that's similar to what's existing. This one, again, is contiguous enough and has enough of the area within a half mile. And then we tried to, we identified a scenario where trying to minimize the potential increase in new multifamily units and prioritizing the existing clusters. This utilizes some of the neighborhood areas around Malden Center in addition to most of Malden Center, and results in a net new zoned unit count of about 1,700 to 1,800. Of course, there's no guarantee that these would be built. It's just zoned, this checks the box for area within a half mile and area contiguous as well. So this is a lot of information, I understand, and I'm just trying to get through it so we can go through it together, and I'll be happy to answer any questions towards the
Can you
end.
do me a favor and
Sure.
try to speak a little louder into the mic? I think some of the audience members are having a problem hearing.
Yeah, sorry. So as we move into discussion, a couple of questions to guide us. Do you have any questions or comments about compliance? Which of the, how do you feel about the proposed scenarios? Which seems most reasonable to you? Do any of them seem unreasonable to you? Which impacts would you prioritize with the impact analysis? We'll go back to that. And are there other impacts that you think should be analyzed? That's it. I think we can open it up for discussion now. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to hit Councilor Winslow since he started off earlier. So
Yeah,
Councilor
a
Winslow.
couple things, just kind of going back before we went into the scenarios about, so 50% of the housing has to be in a continuous area, which means then the other 50%, so is that 31 acres the total or just the 50%?
The 31, the 31 acres it needs to be, I guess, forget about the 31 acres. It needs to be just 50% of the total. So if Malden decides to zone for multifamily in over 100 acres, 50 of them need to be contiguous.
So it really depends upon the acreage, depends upon maybe finding the size. So that's one of the things that I can't really tell from the scenarios is the size of the individual areas. So that's something with going forward, we'll just have to make that clear. Maybe have it further down, but all right. But like I say, so that's the acreage there, okay.
Yes.
And then, and then the other 50%, so let's say, so we have to try to meet the goal of the housing units, that's 6,900 plus. So that's the core thing that we know, and
Right.
depending upon the areas we select, that may be more or less acreage. So that's the type of thing. So we have to hit, the top thing to focus is on the 6,900 units, and then below that is that half of those units have to fall into 50% of the area that happens. Okay, so.
That's right.
Okay, so, all right, and then, just I have a question, I don't know for maybe just in terms of Overlook Ridge, I don't know if Councilor Sika knows this, or Debbie Burke is here, someone from the Community Development Office, of how many units is it planned for right now, and how many have actually been built? I thought it was pretty much built out in Malden. No, there's still some more capacity there? So,
I think it's 1691 is the number of what we call existing or permitted, and so that's the total of.
so the current
current
overlay district in Overlook Ridge could be as much as another 1,000, do we think, or is that, it just really depends? So, yeah, Councilor. Yeah.
So I'm going to turn it over to Council Seeker so she can answer.
So right now, Councilor Winslow, there is a final phase to Overlook Ridge that has not been developed yet, but that final phase right now under current zoning is for commercial.
Okay.
So right now, if we were to do this, it would need to go for a zoning change. Because
Okay.
it's only, the final phase was supposed to be a bunch of retail and a hotel,
And
all
along
that.
Route 1, right, so kind of.
It's the whole side, like, when you get on Route 1 from Salem
South of
Street right
Cap
there,
is,
it's that whole extra tree area, basically, like right after you pass Vining Street.
And so that's at least 5 acres then, that's why.
I don't know what the
But-
square footage is, but yes,
okay.
it's, yeah.
Okay, so
There
then-
is potential there, but
Right,
there would
right.
need to be zoning changes in order for it to be
Right,
used
right. So,
as.
but right now, at least the housing under the overlay district of Overlook is built out. Okay, so that, I just wanted clarification of that. So yeah, just, other people can ask questions, we're digesting here.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you. From the tax revenue perspective, definitely like looking at the new growth versus obviously the offset of the services. That's the main goal that you're going to be looking at, like what the burden would be versus what the new growth benefit.
That's right.
Okay. You know, one of the things that came to my mind is trying to prioritize corridors. You know, obviously you have the Main Street corridor there, which I think probably reflects existing multifamily housing, kind of as you indicated. So I don't know if maybe there's a way to try to do an alternative that continues that all the way south to Everett and all the way north to the border with Melrose. I was thinking about what the current housing stock is, and I can only think of maybe like less than 5 single-family homes on that stretch, at least on the northern portion of it. The other thing I was talking with Councilor Linehan about is I know in some areas you include the train station properties, but then up by Oak Grove you didn't. What was the reasoning for that?
It was just informed by conversations with city staff. I mean, I know that I guess an important thing for us to, maybe it's a fringe thing tonight, but the public land is excluded from the capacity calculator right now. Malden has the option to request an override where there's either, there's some form of, and it's kept sort of intentionally vague, I think, there's some form of planning or permit for multifamily already on publicly owned land. But currently the capacity calculator is excluding public land, and so.
Okay, great. So functionally, the train station at Malden Center would not be included?
Unless you were to pursue an override. So that's why we have this range for Malden Center. 3,700 would be including.
Understood. Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I what I would say is I like this. I think the Overlook Ridge, thanks for clarifying that. I think that, like, obviously we want to encourage commercial development on the Route 1 portion. So I don't know if maybe that is the right spot for more multifamily. But taking a look at like corridors, I think is also beneficial. I'm sure Councilor Winslow, you probably have some thoughts about corridor development. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Councilor Seeker.
Thank you.
Response.
Really quickly, the acreage for Overlook is 14.36. That's left to be developed. Just an FYI.
Would that be the clear or the white area on the map that we're looking at on the screen? Okay, great.
I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm deaf. What did she say?
That's the white part.
Let me look on this thing.
It's that white portion.
Yes, exactly.
Cool.
That's exactly it, yes. Yep, 14.36 acres left.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Linehan.
Thank you. Councilor Winslow, were you putting your light on to respond to Councilor O'Malley? I just wanted to, okay. That's fine. I think I have sort of similar feedback to Councilor O'Malley, which is that it's frustrating that the T-zone property can't be a solution here because I think there's a lot of surface lots and opportunities to maybe create some stretches where, like, I'm looking at this kind of the Summer Street area, kind of, I'm glad to see that potentially part of the solution, but it feels like you're missing this huge other piece by not being able to tie into the train as a transit area. And then I guess so my reaction is that I'd love for Summer Street and that part of town to be part of a solution here, because I think there is potential. So I'm drawn to that as opposed to, I guess, scenario, is it 2 that has the more limited parcels? Yes, so I think I'm feeling more drawn to scenarios 1 and 3 that have a little bit more areas in play. I am kind of torn though, looking at, like the Broadway Plaza. I know we have a planning effort that's gone on there. Folks have said they would like to see multifamily housing and commercial and a lot of things. But like, I just keep coming back to the fact that the transit right now is terrible. And, I think in some ways, if we think about population projections, and we're gonna get a certain number of folks are gonna move here regardless of whether this zoning existed or not. So I wanna make sure folks listening aren't reading this number of units and thinking, oh my God, we're inviting 7,000 people, right? Like there's gonna be some in-migration, out-migration that's gonna happen due to trends separate of this zoning. But when I think about where folks might like to live, it's gonna be places that are connected to being able to get to schools and jobs. And right now, we don't really have like the rapid connections. And I guess it's just a frustration that it feels like putting the cart before the horse, that we'd be trusting that connection would develop. And the T is not in great shape right now. And so I don't see a scenario where we get faster service on Broadway, or, I think we've even had the shuttles that Overlook used to run, like some of them don't run anymore. So even the private shuttles now, there's parking problems, there's traffic problems that are a result of the T and private developers not keeping their promise to shuttle to the train. So those things feel very out of our control, and I think makes it hard to make a good faith calculation about what the actual impacts are gonna be when you think about not just the new growth that Councilor O'Malley's talking about, but the schools, the traffic impacts. I'd love to say that we do the zoning and then we can trust that folks will have a way to get to where they need to go on transit, but it doesn't feel that way right now. But I appreciate the clarity that you've presented here. This makes it really easy to kind of understand the trade-offs and the different parcels that we have to decide. So lots to think about, and thank you for the level of detail. It's very, very helpful for the stage that we're at right now.
Great, thank you.
Thank
I
you,
do want
Councilor.
to point out about the parking lot issue. We worked with another community that similarly had a surface lot right next to their transit station. They had an RFP and a bid for multifamily come up, 6 years in the past, and nothing's really happened with it. But, we spoke with DHCD and are fairly confident that there are flexible ways to show that there are plans for multifamily housing on a MBTA on surface lot next to the train. So, I think if we feel that we can massage that a little bit more, it could be in play.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Winslow.
Yeah, I do like kind of focusing on corridors. I have a little concern with Overlook, is that's right now, if that's the part that's farthest from any bus route that would be developed, it would be the most likely to really encourage people to drive, because, that's so close to the road. So, that's the balance. Councilor Seeker might have a little better sense of, I don't know, maybe we need to look at the numbers, if we have any numbers in terms of transit use at those stops right now. I know there is then also the impact of the, you know, the bus network redesign in terms of how quickly those buses are gonna change the bus going through there. So I'm, you know, getting an understanding of what's going on at Overlook Ridge. I can't imagine that transit use will go up anymore. And I know, you know, reality is from Linden Square to you know, Malden High, traffic is bad right now. So setting up a dynamic where we're adding those units where people are gonna kind of be forced to drive. I mean, I certainly love to have people take the bike trail a lot, but I think that's, you know, I mean, I think ideally the purpose of this is try to concentrate around transit. I'm a little more open-minded about Broadway Plaza. I mean, I think you know, we've gone through a planning study there. We're looking at, you know, we're applying for the TIP for a redesign of Broadway. So, and I think there's a mix. I mean, it wouldn't be 6-story towers, but I think the type of thing that when people in those series of meetings came and saw ground level retail with some housing above, that, you know, at least got some people that were kind of not that excited about it being interested. So I think it's like, you know, and like we're not choosing tonight, so I think it's the type of thing, this is part of the discussion. You know, there is, you know, the bus lanes into Everett. There is pretty frequent regular bus service there. So it's, you know, I don't imagine 900 units, but I think it's something. And the other thing is I really like, and I talked about this even before when we were talking about setting up this meeting, of Malden Center B. I just really think that's like the Stop and Shop area, an area we have a couple empty holes right now. Has a lot of capacity for people to walk to the transit station. I mean, I think that's, if we're going forward, and I mean, 900 units is a lot of units, but considering we put, what, a couple thousand down here, you know, that seems to be a spot where, I mean, this doesn't have to be us doubling the amount of multifamily units. So I think it's the type of thing, that area has the most capacity and would have the least kind of overall transit impact, and really takes care of the, you know, the spirit of this law is to add housing without adding traffic. So that's kind of, I think, you know, particularly that, you know, and you look at that, you're talking about a potential there for 1,600 units. That's even over and above. So we don't even have to go to that level of density.
Right.
So, like I say, I'm, you know, maybe some, you know, that those would be part of the discussion. Like I say, I wouldn't, you know, 900 at Broadway Plaza seems a lot, but I think there are people in, you know, Ward 6 right there. One of the things I'm determined to see is that there are a lot of people who on Chute Street in Hanover who do walk to the bus routes that run on Broadway. I want to see those be safer and better bus service there as we redesign Broadway. And so, and then we can take advantage of all the improvements that Everett's done in making their bus service more efficient there. So, so that's, like I say, that's something that I at least would love to have be part of the discussion. So that's kind of, you know, I think, and if just having those two parts would be, I mean, maybe a little bit more in Overlook Ridge. I mean, like I say, can we, again, have some, you know, add some housing over retail? I mean, I don't really, you see what's happened in Saugus where they built those huge towers or whatever with, you know, Cane's Donuts under it, but you know, maybe there's a little bit of capacity that could be added there, you know, if we're looking at for another 5 acres, but I think we would want to, you know, try to prioritize commercial, but that's kind of my thoughts, so, but thanks, great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McDonald.
Thank you. I'm not on committee, so if there are other committee members.
Neither is he.
Okay. All right, great. Well, first, thank you, thank you so much for laying this out clearly. This is very helpful to see. I agree with a lot of what has been said so far, in that I think we want to be careful not to overwork the Overlook Ridge and Granada Highlands areas where I think there's already been substantial planning work that's gone into that. I do really agree that we want to make sure that the balance of this is transit accessible. So obviously we have a lot near the T. I think looking at the Oak Grove and Malden Center and this point about the Malden Center B lot, I think is a good one, and I think, I agree with what you said, Councilor Winslow, that there's, there's opportunity there without having to have it be at the level of density that Malden Center is at. And I also agree that looking at some more corridors would be helpful. I took a look at the new MBTA bus map. I don't know if that has factored into your analysis, and I'm not 100% clear how final that is, but there is 15-minute or more frequent bus service that goes up Broadway, right, and then over to Linden Square. So to me, that also means that the Broadway Plaza might be a better location because it's at least on rapid bus service, whereas that's not going to be really close enough to those other two lots over on the east side of the city. And then there's another one that comes up, it's going to come up Ferry Street. And so maybe there's some corridor opportunities there. I'm particularly also wondering about the ability to kind of like bring the corridor work kind of down Exchange Street a little more. There's a lot of lots there, and so there's at least more capacity for traffic, and it spreads it a little further out from the center of the city. So that would be one thing that I would welcome, some more understanding about, like if there's any ability to kind of pull some of that east down Exchange Street. Okay, so my question for you, a question I have right now is do we have any ability to have mixed-use zoning be a part of this, or does the zoning have to be solely residential in order to qualify?
Yeah, this is, the way that we've been thinking about this and other communities have been working with it is to do an overlay which allows the current uses, but then allows multifamily residential by right. So you can have other uses. The issue, though, is that, to our knowledge, you can't then make them go through other hoops. So, for example, at Broadway Plaza, you couldn't have a requirement for ground floor retail, for example. So you can't require them to be mixed use. It is by right housing. So if you want to have control over the outcomes at a location like that, then you wouldn't want it to be part of this. Does that make sense?
Sure. So does it mean you could create an option for ground floor retail as part of this?
Developers could definitely propose that. But if it's by right housing, then the housing is by right. They can build just housing if they want to.
Got it. Another question is, in some of our earlier hearings, we were talking about the possibility of a creation of a 40R district in Malden, which obviously helps with our, for folks who are watching this, I mean, that's a state program that provides direct funding both at the time of adoption of zoning, as well as when units are built. It provides some costs towards the infrastructure demands and towards the local share of Chapter 70, like school funding. So I had asked that we take a look at whether any of these scenarios might be more or less compatible with also going for a 40R designation, which I understand is a separate thing. But did that factor into your analysis, and do any of these have that kind of ability to work in that direction? Maybe not by December 31st, but going forward.
I would say yes, but we're not scoped to look at 40R zones, so would be a different effort. But I think there could be overlap.
Okay, because from where I sit, that like helps all of the considerations in this. I mean, you can't make the school buildings bigger, but it does help with some of the local impacts. So I'm certainly interested in us continuing to ask that question. And then another question that I really have to ask, even though I think I know the answer, is that I understand this is really focused on affordability, the state is focused on trying to make sure that we can build housing by right. That's the goal of the state. That's the state's goal in this program. I am concerned about affordability, and that if we're building units that people who want to raise families in Malden can't really afford, that's not accomplishing our larger scale goals. So, I understand that we can look at additional ways to incentivize affordability. And I'm curious if there are other ways to, things you've seen other communities do that help complement this, or that help us think about more affordable, income restricted, or just, not top of the market units as part of what we're driving towards?
Yeah, that's a good question. There are limits to how much affordable housing you can require as part of the MBTA zoning, because they don't want there to be barriers to the production of housing. I believe it's 10%. 50, yeah, okay, so yeah, there's a number, and you can go up to that number, but we'll make a note of that and see if there's any other things, any other strategies communities are using to also pursue.
So when we talked about that last, I understood that was in relationship to our inclusionary zoning ordinance, right, which is 15%, right? And we obviously did a lot of study to back that up. So is that, when you said you can only require up to 20% with feasibility, does that mean through an inclusionary zoning ordinance, or is there another mechanism to require that?
That's it, yeah, inclusionary zoning.
But our inclusionary zoning ordinance, for example, only kicks in at 8 units. So if we were looking at smaller projects, that wouldn't apply. So, okay. One other question I had about this is, like, can you say more about the height or density assumptions that go into some of these calculations? Like, are you trying to basically match the built environment? Have you looked at parking restrictions or any of our, like, offsets or open space requirements or anything else going into this?
Yeah, so all of these numbers of estimated unit capacity are informed by DHCD gives us this calculator. We put in assumptions about setbacks, parking, if there are any limits on the number of bedrooms, or if there's limits on lot cover, like any dimensional standards, parking requirements are informing this. Of course, the ones we have used have been put together in coordination with the city planner, and they are either representative of what's already there. I mean, so as I note here, there are some things that are there.
Right.
There's some super high density buildings on Summer Street that maybe don't make sense to zone the whole area for. But it's informed by underlying zoning, and where underlying zoning doesn't allow us to hit that 5,900 or 6,900 number, we've adjusted a few, and the two that have really stood out as needing to be adjusted are the parking requirement and the minimum lot size for some of these areas. For some of these areas, for multifamily, currently the minimum lot size is over 18,000 square feet, and that excludes a bunch of the majority of Summer Street, north of Florence, and Main Street from being included.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you. And kind of as a follow-up to the affordable housing component, are linkage fees allowed in terms of like other development necessary in terms of like requiring improvements to streetscapes if it's going to be a large development? How do we balance that? Particularly in the downtown here, it's about like $2,000 per unit. We require certain types of public improvements around it. If it doesn't go through a special permit process, how do we ensure that? Would they have to be like minimum design standards that we set?
Yeah, you can establish design standards as long as they're not more onerous than other parts of your community. I'm not sure about the linkage fees. We'll look into that and get back to you.
Thank you. Yes, because if we're gonna like take the hands off the wheel, we want to make sure that there's some guardrails about that. Street trees per whatever, lighting, et cetera. The other question I had is, I'm a little concerned about the fact that we've included our central business district, particularly because you referenced the fact that we couldn't require any type of mixed-use development where the ground floor retail would be required. So I do think that maybe we need to take a look at that and see if maybe some of the existing residential neighborhoods that are already multifamily, for instance, I referenced Main Street, but that the same thing would go for Salem Street, Broadway, Eastern Ave. I'm wondering if maybe it makes sense to co-locate these in those corridors rather than potentially eating up our downtown where we want our businesses to open. And that kind of gets me to my next question. Can we stagger what the maximum amount of multifamily would be allowed? Like if for instance, we talk about like the Main Street corridor or something like that, could we cap it at 3 families or 4 families, et cetera?
Yes. Yeah, so in the calculator and in the material, and in the zoning and in the materials that you would provide to DHU to comply, you could specify that, yeah.
Great. And then obviously you had said that, to Councillor McDonald's question, we would have to look at parking side and rear setbacks because right now that there's probably a lot of parcels that have existing houses on them that don't comply. They're pre-existing non-conforming.
Parking, yes. The setbacks are really not proving to be so limiting. It's the minimum lot size for, and certainly you could look at adjusting the setbacks however you'd like, but in terms of meeting that number, that's not, the priority is parking and minimum lot size in the neighborhoods.
Do you know what percentage of our community is pre-existing non-conforming? Is it like 90%? You don't know that, or it's not 90?
Sarah Brent looked at it, and there was quite a few,
Yeah.
but we didn't look at the whole community.
It feels like more than 50%. I feel like everything in our community is pre-existing non-conforming.
I am sorry to introduce another map, but we did have this on hand.
Does that mean it's not reasonable? I mean, if everything is pre-existing non-conforming, does that mean our zoning is just not reasonable? I just kind of came to that, like, epiphany. Never mind, you don't have to answer that. Thank you.
To show an example, on the map on the screen now, the pink parcels are smaller, don't meet that minimum lot size requirement of 18,750 square feet. And as you can see, the ones that are shaded are multifamily. So that's the minimum lot size to build multifamily under the current zoning. But as you can see, yeah, there are a bunch of, there's a lot with 44 units on it. So it's just, yep.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Winslow.
Yeah, just talking about, can the zones, like an overlay, split a parcel? Like if it's big, like say one of the things, if we're looking at ground level retail, could we have the back be by residence by right, but the front has to be, can we split if it's a big parcel like that? Is that something allowable? I'm just curious as to, I know it may not typically done, but I'm just curious as to is there any constraints that we can't, draw something, especially on some of these parcels? I think it's, like, to me, especially like on Route 60 Center Street, where, I really envision, like, if we set this up right, that, rather, we can get a big Mass DOT grant to redo Route 60 and make it a more urban corridor. And it would be nice to have both sides kind of, rather than having kind of big blank parking lot at Stop and Shop, to have kind of a matching, decor a little bit there. But I want to make sure we still have a Stop and Shop downtown. So, having an urban style market rather than a big suburban parking lot in the middle of it. So I think that's the type of thing that really, I think it is really important that we not, in the rush to do this, end up disrupting our commercial corridors for the housing. So I think that's the type of thing. I'd like to say if we could have Charles Street be the residential side and Commercial Street be multi-use side, that type of thing is, that's the type of thing that would kind of make sense there. So putting it out there, so.
Thank you.
That's an interesting idea. I'm not sure, but we can look into it. I will say that the DHCD compliance calculator is pretty rigid, and a parcel is either in or out, but they also know that it's rigid because it's trying to do something for the whole state, and as long as you give good justification, you can override it. Yeah, we'll look into that.
Thank you. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you. I wanted to go back a little bit to Councilor McDonald and O'Malley's points about the affordability, just for the benefit of the community watching, because I think that while I think we all share the desire to maximize the affordability, our current inclusionary policy already exceeds what DHCD considers reasonable for this, for 3A. So we already are having to get an exemption just for the existing very data-focused, analysis-based number that we have. I'm confident that we will or have already gotten that exemption, just like I think we have merit to asking for an exemption for the public land, but that is something that is, they don't want a deterrent to be put in place by overly requesting so much affordable that it makes development unable to be built. So just, we covered that a little bit in our last committee meeting, and just wanted to, since we're on TV, be able to share that it's not from not wanting to build the maximum affordable, it's that the state is aware that some communities may put in an onerous requirement with the knowledge that that will basically result in no housing getting built. And then I wanted to just ask if you could tell us a little bit about what you are scoped to do, because I'm feeling like we are now, talking about other things that as counselors, we're gonna have to know what we may need to find funding to explore next, right? Like if we're looking at a huge amount of non-conforming properties, if nothing that we have on the ground reflects our zoning or is forward-facing to what we wanna go towards, then are we looking at an overlay? Are we looking at having somebody look at our zoning wholesale? Are we looking at needing to do a study of our on-street parking or parking regulations? Like, can you just tell us what you're covering so that we can start to wrap our heads around what we might need to find funding to study next?
Okay, I'll do it. Sure. Let's go back to our timeline, if I can find that.
And can you send that other slide to us, since I think we only have through page 16?
Yes, of course. So we will work with your staff and your town council to draft the zoning that we, like I said, assume will be an overlay that grants by right housing. That overlay may also need to adjust the dimensional standards depending on where it is in order for housing to be built. And so that could include things like reducing minimum lot size for multifamily. And we've already started that analysis and are looking at it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I was kind of feeling like maybe we'd be up a creek if we get the zoning done, but there's other pieces that we're gonna get quote unquote in trouble for. So that's fabulous. And yeah, I would love to just have the whole presentation so that we can have all that to look back. I think this is a lot to absorb, and speaking personally, I'm definitely gonna watch it again later and wanna just make sure I understand everything. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Spatafora.
Yeah, I'm sorry, side note. There's been a lot of interesting discussion here. I just want to get back to the fact that the Councilor O'Malley put it well, taking our hands off the steering wheel. When we say by right, if we decide to do an overlay, because that seems to be the path. When we say by right, can we at least put some controls in that by right, or is it really just saying by right and we have no say? Because I think that, for me, is a little concerning. Not so much on, I would say, parking dimensional controls, but I think sight lines and other things that are important to the community. We just don't want to give away the store just to put a few units there. So I would like to find out what the restrictions are if we're going to put by right, and what it really allows us to do, or not do.
Yeah, that's a good question. They're a little bit vague about that in the guidelines, but you can put in design standards. So you've done a fantastic job with this downtown. The buildings look great. The urban fabric looks great. I assume that you had a lot of hand in making sure that it all came out in a cohesive whole. And so I think that kind of work to make sure that the design is consistent would be appropriate. And we will include that in the zoning, so you have those design standards. But in terms of requiring additional uses, we're less clear about whether that would be okay.
And I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to say it out loud because we've talked about it. This doesn't supersede our exclusionary zoning, right? Inclusionary zoning, right?
We're talking about that.
Because when we say by right, does that also check the box and say, we're going to skip over that?
Yeah, there's a certain amount that you can include for inclusionary zoning.
Which is on our current ordinance, right?
Yes,
But anything over that would be an ask, and that could be deemed.
that's correct. Yeah, you can't.
That
ask-
could be deemed heavy-handed and not allowing them to build because we might say we want more affordability, right?
That's correct.
It seems kind of backwards, right? I mean, the state comes in and wants you to build more units, but they don't throw the word affordable in there, so
Yep.
it seems backwards. The other question I have is, once we probably have to determine a couple options, I would say. I know we got some councils who's talked about adding some different parcels. Would you then come back, as part of your analysis, then to look at the cost, what the state would be supplementing? Because I know, let me say it this way. The state is fabulous for coming in with a big check, and then 3 years later, the check goes away based on revenue. So there'll be an impact not only to infrastructure, but I'm assuming too also our education system in the city of Malden. Is there a way to do an analysis once we determine what parcels, and based on the cost potentially, based on number of potential kids? For me, we hear it now that we're some schools are taxed, right? And based on where some of these properties are, the last thing we want to do is have the kids either bused or driven to the other part of the city to go to a school, because that has just the amount of impact as anything. We don't bus here anymore, but based on, I think, some of the submissions here, we might have to consider that going forward, which has a cost. Is that part of the analysis, along with infrastructure?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now. Oh, so Councilor Winslow's point about splitting the parcels is a great idea. What happens if, when you go back, National Grid's lot over here on Commercial Street, if they were willing, the owner, right, they could probably split the lot themselves into 2 parcels, create one for housing and one for mixed use. That would probably allow that parcel, which is 1 now, to be separated into 2. That would probably work in that scenario, wouldn't it?
I think that would fall under your subdivision ordinance.
Yeah, but it's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Cone Hayes.
Thank you. I am also not on this committee, but thank you for allowing me a chance to ask a quick question. And this might have been brought up. Councilor Linehan had proposed a couple of years ago a draft ordinance on accessory dwellings. Did you bring this up here? Am I missing? Okay, all right. So I'm just wondering if that would be something, if we did pass an ordinance, would that be able to be included in account of like a multifamily housing, something like that?
Sure, so this overlay only includes either individual buildings that have 3 or more units, or multiple unit buildings on a parcel that each have at least 2 units.
Okay, thank you.
Are you all set, Counselor?
Yes, thank you.
Counselor Winslow.
So just trying to, okay, sorry.
Sorry, just to clarify, at least 2 units each. No, it doesn't have to be 2 units.
So always trying to throw out some ideas. I guess another question would be just kind of in the trying to have ground level retail. Let's say the overlay said, by right, you could have 2-story residential, but as an incentive, you could have another story if that story was ground level retail. Is that the type of thing we could probably work in or something like that? That type of thing that they would have the option, but, we would, limit or even give some incentive for extra housing. So maybe that's another way to do it, that we create some cap, like on how high it can be, but if there's ground level retail, I think that's the type of thing. That might be the easier way than splitting parcels or whatever, but that might be something that to think
Yeah,
about. So,
that's a great idea. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
I
yeah.
think as long as the first 2 floors, you know, that minimum gets us to the capacity requirement of
So I mean, whether
6,900.
it's 2 floors or 3, I mean, I think it's the type of thing that we could, in those areas, you know, like I say, parcel B in the Broadway Plaza, where there might be some interest, that may be the way to have that overlay. And like I say, I mean, Broadway Plaza is a nice commercial area and has, you know, one of our big Asian markets and other type of things. It would, you know, I mean, so that's the type of thing, we don't want to lose the retail there, but in some ways, housing might enhance that area. And so many communities are going to kind of these lifestyle centers where you have the combination of housing, you know, multi-use in places that, you know, we fortunately have that to begin with, but like the fact that we'd be getting rid of it kind of seems kind of crazy. So like maybe that kind of overlay, that type of thing would be a way to do it. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor McDonald? Did you?
Thank you. Yes, I had the same question as Councilor Winslow about whether we could, if we're meeting the minimum standards, create additional incentives in the zoning for affordability or ground floor retail or whatever else we want to. Okay, so that I think is very helpful to know. And then I just had this other question. So once we submit compliance, and just as an aside, you know, we didn't necessarily say this, but I saw that the Attorney General issued a very public warning to communities that while, yes, right now the stick in this, or the lack of carrot, is not access to state grants, but basically telling any community that thinks about willfully non-complying that they could face legal action. So you know, we're on track. I appreciate you being here. Like, we're all having the same, that's great. And so, assuming we get approved for our, you know, MBTA Communities compliance, is there an ongoing compliance requirement? Like, if we change our zoning or purchase our parcel becomes public, do we have to go back and get recertified, or is this kind of a one-time thing? Do we know from DHCD, from the state, like what the ongoing requirements will be about this?
It hasn't been clarified. We've asked and haven't heard back. But as long as we're involved in this process, we'll respond to what comes out about ongoing compliance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley.
And I think probably my final time. So I know that we're talking about an overlay, but could you present a regular zoning change that would, like, alternative? Because I think that there are probably some dimensional control changes that we might want to bring into the underlying zoning. Only because if we are encouraging housing in our central business district, you know, we might also want to encourage, like, other uses, like, that are more in line with the commercial nature of the downtown. And if we're gonna be allowing it for housing, why not also allow it for commercial and other uses? And then from a minimum design standard, I think that's so crucial here. I do like the kind of the bonuses that we were talking about if they do include other uses. I think that's super helpful. But also having minimum design standards allows us to not make a mistake as much. Like, for instance, this project, we have lighting on Pleasant Street, but we never had them do any lighting on Florence Street. And so that was just an oversight on our part. If we have minimum design standards in there that say you need to put a decorative light pole every 25 feet, you need to put a street tree every 25 feet, and they don't do that, we're allowed to kind of go back and be like, hey, you don't meet the minimum design standards. Like, they're minimum. And obviously, if it doesn't go through the by right process, and it also goes through the special permit, you could modify those underlying requirements. So thank you so much for this. I think it's super helpful.
Seeing no other lights. I'm not sure if it's, I heard a lot more about, like, adding in corridors, so it almost sounds like this scenario 4, that people kind of looking at. So I'm not sure, we wanted to get some clarity and like pare it down to, one or two so that you can kind of fully explore that. It is, although we do have till December, there's a lot of work involved in it. We really want to be able to give you sort of some marching orders. So how would you like to proceed? So we could sort of, this would not be a vote, but sort of a sense of the city council, the members that are here. So is scenario 1, 2, or 3 more advantageous, or is there some consensus that one of the scenarios is just not where we want to go? How would you like to proceed?
Yeah, if I may. I think there's a couple decision points here that are impactful in terms of how we're thinking about this. The first one is we want to get a sense from the community what your goals are in terms of unit production. So there is a way in which we can use all of your existing multifamily and just change it to by right and thereby meet the requirement without adding as many units. Or we can take areas that don't have any multifamily and zone them to be as of right. And so is the goal of this council to produce fewer units or more units or units in certain locations? So that's one question. And then the other thing that I would want to know about is if certain areas aren't as choice as some of the other ones. So basically what I can do is repeat back what I think we heard, which is that Oak Grove, Malden A, Malden B are all good. We didn't hear a lot of feedback about north of Florence. We will take another pass at Summer Street and Main Street in those corridors to see if extending them makes sense, but we also did hear that generally they are good. Broadway Plaza was a bit more controversial, especially given the loss of control over the outcome of that. But then when we think about Granada Heights and Overlook Ridge, again, we could just rezone that existing multifamily to be as of right and thereby obtain that capacity. So maybe a little bit of input from you about what your goals are in this process.
Well, Councilor Winslow hit it first.
Sorry. No, I mean, I think everybody's supportive of, places like Overlook and Altitudes that are already pretty much multifamily we've already planned and stuff like that. I think just adding to that is a little bit more. I don't know if Councilor Sika has a great thing, but then I think, I'm looking at scenario 1. That was a goal of 2,900 units that, in fact, we only need 900 units. So, like I say, I'm willing to have, Broadway at least be part of the discussion. So, I think that's maybe something to start with, and then, like I say, not necessarily adding units at Overlook, but just making sure we get credit for those that are there. And then, then, like I say, that we have public meetings coming, or this is not, we're just trying to have a coherent thing to talk about of, what do people think about adding some units in the north of Florence? What do people think about Broadway with some by right housing, but a resident with a commercial overlay, if we can do that. So, I think that we're just trying to get a discussion scenario. I think the nice thing about scenario 1 is that it starts out a little bit big and we can shave that down. If we have a scenario that's right at the limit, we're always going to be, trading off. So that's the kind of thing. It's I think we definitely not at the 12,000 unit ones or whatever. So, but it may be better to be, look at something like scenario 1, which is a little bit higher, than winnow it down as we go forward and have the community discussions, rather than trying to start out too narrow and then then just find that that's not happening or whatever. So that would be my thoughts.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilor O'Malley.
So, again, I would actually counter that Malden Center A and B, potentially, are not the ideal locations to put this. because of the fact that we lose any control over special permit. And those areas really should be, to some degree, heavily commercial. You know, we've built so much housing downtown in Malden Center A, and we're just now getting the commercial projects that we've been waiting decades for, that I think it would be a mistake for us to disincentivize that. So I would be opposed to Malden Center A being included. Maybe there's a portion of it that could be included. I can think maybe the north side of Pleasant to Washington. There are some dilapidated multifamilies, buildings there that maybe would eventually see some type of redevelopment, but definitely wouldn't want to discourage more commercial. For me, I think there's an opportunity here to allow our residents to build wealth, and I think it would be a missed opportunity for us to not let that, or not encourage that. So for instance, I think about a ranch. One of the things that we're seeing a lot now is people are taking a ranch and putting a second story on it, extending out in the back. I think there's ways you could get some of these low density, probably lower value homes that are owner occupied potentially, and allow them to put a second unit in, or something like that. That could be a way that we maybe disperse this more and don't discourage commercial development in our central business district. But I kind of agree with you, Councilor Crowe. I'm used to seeing Councilor Murphy here. I think we kind of need a scenario 4, but I guess that's maybe the next iteration of what you'll provide.
Thank you. That's good input to avoid places with commercial potential.
That's just my opinion. I don't know if, and I don't think it should be all of it. I think there's a way to incorporate it. But if we lose all control and we're just now getting like commercial, biotech startup companies that want to move to Malden Center, I just don't want to discourage that. Thank you.
All right, we have a few more lights, and I do want to give the planning board an opportunity to either ask a question or have some input or any of those things. So we'll get quickly through the rest of the councilors. Councilor Linehan.
Thank you. I think I wanted to just generally agree with Councilor Winslow's feeling that scenario 1 gives us the most flexibility to start with. For my money, adding some capacity with a priority near transit. Near transit is the key thing for me. I feel the most confident that we can accommodate the additional capacity with the existing system. I also would love to hear in our subsequent meetings what Councilor Sika feels about the parcels that are going to affect her ward the most. But I think to Councilor Winslow's point, we have the option of bringing in more to start with and then sort of fine tuning as we go. My question to you in response to what Councilor O'Malley said, I 100% agree with not wanting to tie our hands on the commercial, but do we lose, by taking out Malden Center A, are we losing that contiguous requirement? Because I feel like that's a lot of work to ask you to go back and find another contiguous 50% area.
Yeah, so I just pulled up the map of the existing multifamily. I think we could find a through line of multifamily that would connect the corridors that could be turned to by right multifamily,
Yeah.
while avoiding some of the key commercial parcels.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McDonald.
I'll also agree that 1 seems like a good place to start, and I'd like to hear more about the east side. And I really like this point, Councilor Linehan, about with the contiguousness, if we can avoid the really critical parcels along Pleasant Street here that we really want to maintain control of. Because I really think it's worth exploring these kind of incentives that, especially in these larger parcels where we might be able to have more options, Malden Center B and Broadway Plaza, I think that's really worth exploring is my perspective. So you asked about priorities. I will tell you my priorities as one of 11 members of this body. My first priority is to try to make sure that we have more housing that people can actually afford to live in. I think that the cost of housing is one of the top threats to the future of this community because if you have to make, $250,000 a year to live here, then what we love about this community, much of it will fall away. So that's my first priority. And my second priority is to, however it plays out, have development that overall is good for the city. So it is close to transit, so we're not creating too many traffic problems. We're balancing the school access. We're thinking about city revenue. We're thinking about green space. And so like that, that we've got a sustainable approach to our development. So those are my priorities.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sika.
Thank you. So I am, Councilor Linehan, open to exploring different zoning options for the Roseland, the Overlook Ridge parcel, because there is quite a bit of land that is still there, and I don't necessarily have many issues of that location. However, the altitude, few years back, way before COVID, they came before us and they were looking to expand the apartments at that location, and they were going to be taking up parking spaces. So the new buildings that they were proposing to build were gonna take away their parking lots. And I am so grateful at the time that that project failed, because at the beginning of COVID, I actually had to make all surrounding streets up at altitude residential parking. Because once everyone started staying home, my residents on Kennedy, Winchester, Glenmere, Greenwood, Central, Skyline, they all started, people were parking where I've never seen a car parked before, coming around the bend at Central. So I absolutely hate that idea. I would like you to cross it off this list altogether. If we were to add more buildings, it would only make it worse. The only way that they would be able to do it is if they were to go up, and I don't think that's, that's something that they should do or would want to do. And I would absolutely be dead against removing parking spaces for them to get more apartments up at that location. So thank you for asking my opinion.
Thank you. Counselor Spatafora.
Yeah, I'll be a little repetitive. I think option one gives us the biggest bang for our buck in terms of large parcels. I think this idea of looking at ways to incentivize with commercial, some type of commercial aspect, either of the development that was being proposed or one that might be the parcel next door or across the street that might not be part of this overlay, I think is exciting, because I think that's how you create that lifestyle where you certainly will not need a vehicle. I think if we start to try to do this in ones and twos in the neighborhoods, we're probably gonna lose, because it's gonna take a lot more of those single houses to change. And we all know in the neighborhoods, you have some parking issues as it is, right? So I think that creates a lot more noise, I think, for our residents in our neighborhood. So certainly we could, move around, but being near the transit, I think, is important. We've seen it work in other communities. And the other thing I would, Councilor McDonald, I'm getting lost, everybody's forgetting names today. I mean, he has a wish list, so my wish list would be not only creating more housing by this, but even different levels of housing, meaning, could you build it so that if there's a large parcel, you could have some affordable ownership, right? And certainly apartments and maybe age-appropriate housing for, I know you gotta do by right, but if there's a way that we can incorporate that mixed use of housing so that we have some revenue from ownership, because that's the ultimate goal is, and, maybe an age component to make it age-friendly to keep people in at least housing. I know there's a lot to ask there, but I think if we're building wish list, right, let's put it out there from that perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Cologne-Hayes.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. I'm assuming you don't mean that we need to give you all of our ideas tonight. And also that we're going to have public meetings. I want the feedback before I give any priorities, obviously, from our residents. But affordable housing, of course, you're gonna hear that over and over again, and near transit. But I definitely am looking forward to public meetings where people get to, we get to hear from our residents, who are like the most important. So thank you for this presentation.
Thank you. So given our last 6 minutes, I'm not sure if anyone from the planning board had a question, comment, concern, idea. I have a question. Absolutely. Yeah, that would be great, just so we're being televised, so we want to make sure, I forgot to say that, sorry. And you might want to introduce yourself as well, just.
Yes, Chuck Iovan, Chairman of the Planning Board. A few of the comments and questions. I'll start off with a couple questions. MBTA Communities is in the description that we've all seen. Does the MBTA actually have any role in this law or legislation? Is there anything in acting in tandem, specifically about expanding rail service out to communities that have more real estate, they're less dense, and could accommodate more housing for the crisis that Massachusetts is facing? No. Okay. Yes, not unexpected, but easy. The second question I had is, I know in reading the presentation, which was excellent, by the way, you guys did it was very informative. It was very provocative with regard to a lot of the ideas and opportunities that are available to us. But one of the main concerns I have is about transportation. It's already poor in Malden right now. I know personally I circumvent going through downtown in many parts of the city just because transportation, it's just so bad. I'm curious if anything about this would include improvements to the infrastructure. I mean, we're almost 400-year-old community. There were a couple comical lines about everything being pre-existing non-conforming. It's a 400-year-old community. Is there anything going to be undertaking as part of this that would actually improve the transportation? Councilor Winslow mentioned maybe the state would come in and do something with Route 60, modernize it. Is there any other ones? Especially looking at this, I was actually surprised when I saw it, how much is right in the central area. I know it's because of the train stations, but if we drop in another 3,000 or 4,000 units down there, I can't imagine what getting through there would be like. So no, okay. As I said, my first main concern is about transportation and improving it across the city, especially if we're going to expand 25%. And if we're going to assume this is by right, then we have to assume we're going to get 7,000 more units. Because the economics change once you start introducing by right, and things that might not have been economically feasible suddenly become feasible. And I think people are going to max it out. But I'm also concerned about the schools. I don't know where we would build another school if we added in 7,000 more families, or even 5,000 more families. Anything about what we'll be studying that will speak to, well, you said you're going to talk about what the impact is on the schools, but will it extend to what the possible solutions might be, or is that left to us? You'll raise it as a concern, and it will be up to us to see it and identify it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for those comments. So the issue of adding 7,000 new units, I think, is a little bit of a mischaracterization. If you look at how we've highlighted this, the areas that we've studied currently have 6,000 multifamily units. So if you take, for example, Granada Highlands, which has 920 multifamily units, which was acquired through a special permit, and say it's 920 units by right, you don't add any multifamily units.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying, I understand that, but what my concern is with that, and I think we should absolutely get credit for the growth we've done over the past couple decades as far as expanding multifamily. Absolutely, I was a little bit concerned, I thought I was getting a sentiment from the council that we were looking to add the 7,000 units, and we were looking to add as much as possible. to help do this. So if we're going to be able to get the credit for what we've already done, that's terrific, and it won't be 7,000. But depending on, I guess, what we end up identifying as the areas and the current existing one, it remains to be seen what that number might actually be. Okay. I have a concern about the idea of turning any ones, twos, or threes into ones and twos into the multifamily, or expanding the threes even further in the neighborhoods. We have a lot of old homes. There's not much parking associated with now because we're such an old community. And I have a big fear about turning these Victorians into multi-unit housing and filling in the gaps that way. So I have a concern with that. Another just comment, and I know we're at the early stages, but when we do come down to crafting the zoning ordinances, we're going to have to be real clear and real specific about anything that's allowed, any of these special items that folks are proposing for opportunities and incentives. We need to be real clear about it. We can't leave it blank or vague, because once we get it in there and passed, you know that the developers will push the envelope and try to get as much as they can out of what we end up having down in writing. The last thing I would say is I think just looking at the scenarios, I think we definitely, to get credit for what we've already built, I think we definitely need to include Center A, but somehow preserve commercial, because it is the commercial center of the city. Even though it resides in Councilor O'Malley's Ward 4, I've always viewed central business as all the wards. Everyone in the city owns central business, and we want to get credit for what we've already built there, but we certainly don't want to stymie any of the economic development we've had with the R&D and research and things of that nature. I also think Malden Center B is an opportunity, as Broadway Plaza is. I think back, as Councilor Seeker did, to the Granada Highlands altitude area, and being on the traffic commission, the number of problems we have from people in that neighborhood that regularly come up with what's there now. If we were to include them and they could do it by right and not have the parking constraints that prevented them before, I think including altitude, Granada Highlands is a problem. But I think Broadway Plaza, Center A, Center B, and getting the credit for Overlook Ridge. I'm not sure, I think there was one scenario that brings up to 2,300 units. I think that was the third scenario. I'm not in favor of that at the moment, but I think we should definitely get credit for the 1,700 units that are there in an effort to keep the new building or the new development in check and help the city, because I really think that it could be a way to help the state resolve some of the housing concerns. But I'm also very worried that we're going to be left trying to travel through the city, through the neighborhoods, with all these additional units in place. But great job on the presentation, and look forward to seeing how it evolves from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. And we do have another couple of lights. We're gonna, Councilor Simonelli.
Thank you. I apologize for being late. I was coming from work. It's funny that you guys are doing this now. I was actually down in Broadway Plaza earlier today, talking to a couple of the property owners down there. And we were actually talking about, you know, doing some type of mixed-use type of activity down there. I know that's your ward now, but, you know, that's where I grew up, and I know all those people. And, well, some of it's yours, but I think we work well together. Yeah, we'll work on it. So, yeah. So my thing is, you know, I think the people that live there now, because behind there is the Newland Street Housing Development, and then there's the Bowden Street Apartments Development. And, you know, those people really kind of depend on the stores that are down there now, you know, like you know, when they took Stop and Shop out of there, that was a big hit for that neighborhood. And a lot of them shop at the Dollar Tree store now, so, which you can't really get a lot of stuff out of there. But, so, you know, I would be interested in seeing like some kind of a multi-use purpose down there, maybe some storefronts on the bottom with some living capacity up above. I think may work pretty well down there. So maybe we can entertain that at some point. I'm not opposed to that because we definitely need housing. I get hit with it every day, numerous times a day for people that need housing. So, and then the, like the ones and twos, what kind of bothers me about that is that would it be people like, you know, owner occupied? Would they have to be owner occupied to be able to do a conversion like that? Because I gotta tell you, right now I'm going through some problems in a specific area in my district on absentee landlords, you know, that just don't take care of their properties at all, and they're just in it for the dollar, you know, and maximize their space, their little postage stamp for as many rents as they can get. And, you know, the neighborhood takes a hit on that and the density. So would that be owner occupied, or would it just be for everybody that owns a single or two-family house? They turn it into a 3 or 4 or multi-unit?
I don't think any of the areas that we've looked at include conversions from 2 to 3. North of Florence is how many? What's the density there? Do you remember? No, for proposed in the capacity model.
I don't remember, but the total number of units there right now is 504. 412 of those are 3 plus. And our current capacity calculation is 600 units. So maybe that's, and we can, you know, change that number to be closer to the existing, or add, or it's a starting point. But I guess I just mean this to say that would include, you know, some conversions, but it's also it can be designed to be not too far off from what's already there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and also to answer your question, you can't have any requirements over tenure, so rental or owner occupied.
And, you know, I was listening to Chuck a little bit on what he's saying as far as the infrastructure and the wear and tear on the infrastructure. Again, I know that we need housing. I know Everett's doing some stuff over there where they're doing units where you move in there not having a car and you can't get a vehicle, so they don't really worry about the parking too much. But we're having a severe problem here in Malden with the parking issues, and, you know, when you're doing this stuff, would you be taking up a lot more parking spots than you would be given?
My understanding was that they would be, I mean, we would be requiring a certain number of spots per unit. Currently, it's 1 per bedroom in most of the areas that we're talking about. And so that's, the calculator is, we can use the calculator in any way to take up parking or add parking in whatever way. But currently, I think we we're taking up a large percentage of the total buildable area to provide parking for these zoned units in the model. I guess, sorry, maybe that wasn't very clear. I don't know if Nels has anything to add.
Well, is it like the whole design, because it's on the, using the MBTA and transportation, so the desire would be for these units to be, the people living in those units to be using public transportation, right? That's the desire here, isn't it?
Yes, and you can pursue that as a municipality, however strictly you want to, by adjusting parking requirements to sort of live that out or provide parking while also being close to housing. But that said, the underlying requirement of 1 per bedroom really limits our ability to meet that capacity requirement, meet the density requirement. It just takes too much land off the table to be considered for the capacity estimate, if that makes sense.
Well, like I said, I'm looking at the parcels here and, Broadway Plaza, that would be something that I would be interested in talking with my colleague, Councilor Winslow, when the time comes to make a move there to develop that area. But I think that, having some commercial capabilities down there is very important for the people, the existing people that are living down there now, because a lot of those folks don't have vehicles that are living in the Newland Street housing projects or the Bowden Apartments or some scattered housing outside from that area, and they kind of rely on the Broadway Plaza to, get some of the things that they need down there. So, I'd hope we'd have some more discussion. I'm sure we're going to have more discussion on that as the world turns, right? So I'll be looking forward to that. And I am interested in listening to our city planner to talk about this plan. I'd like to get her point of view on it, and with the density and the usage, schools being overcrowded, streets, traffic, so infrastructure type things. So that'll tell the tale for me too as we're moving forward. But, all right, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Winslow has.
Yeah, I guess
The
another
last
thing
word.
is just related to parking. One of the things is trying to right-size it, if you're in walking distance to the orange line, maybe that's a little different. I think we found with the development down here that actually, like 160 Exchange, where we had a higher parking requirement, there's a lot of extra parking that's not being used in those buildings, versus J, it's a little bit better balanced, and I think we bounced it back up. So that's the type of thing. We have some experience downtown. Maybe, further out, maybe we right-size it for that, knowing that, we're trying to encourage, even in our inclusionary zoning has some lower parking requirements if you're doing inclusionary zoning, so there's some advantages there. And then I know Chuck's point on transportation, I know that, it comes up everywhere. What I keep on emphasizing, like Lynn just got $50 million to do their section, 2 miles of Broadway. So the thing, a community like Malden, if we are strategic, the transportation funding coming down from the federal government, we can be lined up if we have good projects that support the right kind of development. So there's a lot of money out there. One of my biggest disappointments was that, some of the mitigation money that came from J Development should have really been going to fix the Center Street corridor. It didn't happen. So we have to do that another way. But there's a lot of, there's the federal infrastructure bill. The Boston NPO is focusing on communities like Malden to invest. Revere got over $10 million. Lynn got another $20 million for the Linway, a special grant program nationally to help undo roads that were built in the 70s that really hurt urban communities. Maybe Route 60 could qualify for that. So there's a lot of money out there. If we work with our community development office and get that new transportation planner that we just posted today. But there's a lot of money out there if we pursue it. So I think, but we have to come up with good plans, and that has to be, they don't give you money just to repave what you got. You gotta show that it's helping meet, housing needs and transportation needs, and, that's what we have to do. So I think it's, but, I guess I'd make a motion that we would, recommend that we go with scenario one with the amendment that we try to look at, Malden Center A to make sure that we're not overly impacting the commercial areas of that. So that would be my motion, so.
All right, do I have a second? And seconded by Councilor Linehan. He wants to we weren't really planning to take a vote, they really wanted sort of the sense of the city council.
So that's
and-
my
and
sense, a
so
vote of a sense of this.
that we kind of more explore scenario one that kind of gives us the most flexibility with some of the amendments that Councilor O'Malley had commented on about the section A.
Yeah, I think overall, just making sure we're making sure we're not negatively impacting our commercial areas, whether it's Broadway Plaza or downtown, that if those overlays, we have to, I guess that's the general sense of the council. So
All right, and seconded by Councilor Linehan. Clerk will call the roll. So it's kind of mixed up here.
Councilor Linehan? Yes. Councilor Seega? Yes. Councilor Spatafora? Yes. Councilor Winslow?
Yes.
Chair Crow?
Yes. So I think scenario one seems to be the winner. And I know we'll have a lot more conversations as this gets developed. So thank you so much for your time. I'm not sure if someone from the city staff, if they had any follow-up questions, or you're all good? So, okay. And we're over time. So do I have a motion to adjourn? This is Ordinance Committee. So, seconded by Councilor Seega. Or Winslow, whoever. All those in favor? Any opposed? We stand adjourned. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you again for the planning board for being here. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for your input. All those in favor?
No, I know.
Oh, all right, good.
Yes, no, you did.
Good.
Call meeting to order, 7:16.
I'd like to call the Malden City Council to order. All rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to those republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silence for both the men and the servicewomen who've served this country and for those who've given the ultimate sacrifice. Thank you. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilor Cologne Hayes. Here. Councilor Condon. Councilor Crowe. Councilor Linehan. Councilor McDonald. Councilor O'Malley. Councilor
He's
Seega.
here.
Here. Councilor Simonelli.
He's here.
Councilor Spatafora.
Here.
Councilor Winslow. Here. Councilor Murphy.
Any personal privilege for anybody? Steve, is there a light on for personal privilege? Yeah. Hold on one second. Let me just go over here.
Yeah, I just want to wish folks that have a very happy Easter. And I also want to thank DPW for working with Napoli's Pizza. We actually got a little decoration for Ramadan, so that celebration goes on. And then I just want to let people know it's starting to be 4th of July planning. So if any Ward 6 residents are interested in getting comments about what's going to happen for 4th of July, I encourage anybody who's interested and wants to lend a hand to reach out to me and get involved in getting involved with the Ward 6 4th of July. So we have our next meeting coming up on April 16th. Thanks, great.
Councilor Karen Cologne Hayes. Hold on one second. There you go, Councilor.
Thank you. I want to announce that for the first time ever, the Juneteenth committee for our planning for the Malden Juneteenth, which will be on June 17th this year, we are holding a fundraiser. Everything, as everybody knows, is super expensive nowadays, and we are trying to do our part and not just focusing on grants, but also to raise money on our own. So I would like to announce our first Juneteenth music bingo. I've been hearing a lot about this. It's super fun, and the tickets are $30. Everything goes to, again, help us throw a fantastic Juneteenth. It's Thursday, April 27th, coming up quick. 6:30 to 8:30 at the Irish American Club, and you can also buy tickets online at Eventbrite. We just put that up, and we'll be blasting out this flyer starting tomorrow. Thank you.
Oh, it's not on TV?
Oh,
We don't, well, it's good practice. It's good practice.
did you hear that?
So Council McDonald, with that bit of new news, would you like to still talk to your phone?
I didn't hear what you said.
Hold on one second. Even though Council McDonald would still like to go through this. Council McDonald.
Well, I will skip my other announcement, but I just wanted to acknowledge, so last week at our public announcements, we also didn't acknowledge that last Friday was Transgender Day of Visibility. So I just wanted to speak that into this space. This is a time when transgender, non-binary, gender non-conforming folks are facing attacks all over the country. So it's important that we be as proactively welcoming as possible in Malden and push back against that kind of hate and make sure that we know that whatever folks' gender identity or expression, that is welcome and valued here in Malden. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Seeing no other lights, I will entertain Councilor Seeker's motion to adjourn, seconded by Councilor O'Malley. All those in favor? All those opposed? Council adjourned.